Death leaves a heartache no one can heal. Love leaves a memory no one can steal. There is no more devastating event for a parent than losing a child. The pain and grief are indescribable, often leaving families shattered in shock and unable to process all the emotions that come with such a tragic event. On Friday, June 6, 2008, Orion Colligan, the only child of Stephen Colligan and Vennie Magnus, died as a result of accidental drowning. Orion drowned as a result of falling into an artificial pond at the Lakes at Monaco Point housing complex, which was less than 25 yards away from his doorstep. He was playing while his mother was unpacking boxes. The pond was slippery from accumulated algae and posed a danger to everyone. Here's Orion's mother, Vennie Magnus, speaking about Orion.
My son Orion was the most curious, happy, energetic, was the most kind-hearted, gentle soul. He loved learning. It could have been anywhere from dinosaurs to space to Aikido. The thing that I miss most about Orion is always having questions. I miss holding his hand. I miss him asking for his mommy shirt. I learned from the case, and the reason we started the case to begin with was to hold apartment owners responsible for their faults. That you have to be truthful with your tenants. You have to be forward with your knowledge of previous accidents to potential tenants. I learned that you have to research yourself and that apartment buildings aren't going to tell you the truth. The Podboy Law firm with Ron and Bridgett, that they both had very separate roles. And I would like to also add that Phil Harding had his role additional. So the team was this magical mix of support. End of the day, after the process, people have asked me about lawyers, and I will always highly recommend Podboy Law Firm to anybody. They were strong. They didn't let us down. They held us up the whole time. And the whole process, the trial was 1 week, but they held us the whole time. And they still do. They still reach out and make sure that we're doing okay. I would absolutely recommend them.
And here's Bridgett on how she communicates with clients who suffer unimaginable tragedies like Vennie and Steve.
My job at the Podboy Law Firm is Director of Client Communications. What I do is I coordinate by helping the clients going through some very hard, tough times. Like in Orion's case, I helped Vennie just go through day-by-day struggles. I remember in the courtroom every day she'd ask are you going to be here tomorrow? Are you going to be here tomorrow, the next day? And I mean, from the little things, from a cough drop to, a piece of candy because we were in court for so long and so many hours, just communicating with her was just an amazing thing. When she cried, I cried. It was just a hard time this was probably the hardest I ever had to go through. It was with her, the crying, and Steve also, the crying, and it was just an emotional case, and it was an amazing trial. I'm, glad that we were able to get the verdict that we got for them, and the emotions are still there. That never goes away. Their son is never coming back, but I feel that justice was served. What I want everybody to know about our law firm is that we take it serious and we work hard for the people and we get it done and we'll be there for you.
In this insider exclusive network TV special, Justice in America, Orion Colligan's story, our news team visits with Ron Podboy at Podboy Law, Bridgett Podboy, and Orion's mother, Vennie Magnus, and Orion's father, Steve Colligan, to discuss how the jury awarded Orion's parents a verdict for $4 million in the fatal drowning of their 6-year-old son, and to discuss the unique aspects of this case, the legal challenges they faced, as well as the problems regarding tort reform in Colorado. Ron Podboy is no stranger to challenging cases. He has earned a reputation as an unyielding trial lawyer who repeatedly represents individuals and families and repeatedly wins. Ron's amazing courtroom skills and headline-grabbing success rate continue to provide his clients with the results they need and the results they deserve. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Denver, Colorado. It is my great pleasure to introduce Ron Podboy to the show. Welcome to the show, Ron.
Thank you, Steve.
You have us at your beautiful house here in Colorado. I look out the window and the mountains are out there. It's a lovely place to live, isn't it?
Pleasure to have you here.
We are here today to talk a little bit about what your law firm does, but a particular case. We'll get into that in a minute. What does your law firm specialize in?
Steve, mostly criminal. I'm an old DA in Denver and cut my teeth in the courtroom doing criminal prosecution, and I've always loved the criminal law. But I like to come in to the courtroom through different doors, and as my career has gone on, I've done quite a few civil cases, and this was one of them.
And tell us a little bit about this case. This is the wrongful death of Orion Colligan, is that correct?
That's correct. Orion was 6 years old when his mother checked out an apartment house, a complex. We believe she was significantly misled in what the dangers to a child were at that apartment complex. It was very shortly after she moved in, 10 days, that Orion, just in a moment, went over to a pond that she had been led to believe was a shallow pond. It was not a shallow pond.
And a safe pond.
And a safe pond. Nothing safe about it.
And what happened?
Vennie was talking on the phone with Steve Colligan. They weren't together. They had a close relationship, however, and she was talking on the phone with him for about an hour. Sometime during that hour, Orion said, "Can I go to my play spot?" That was right out front on a concrete pad. She let him do that. She's back and forth all the time. But checking on him one moment, he's not there. She runs all over the apartment complex looking for him. The cops are called, the firemen are called, and that's shortly after the body was discovered in a 5-foot pond, which was a fetid mess of goose feces, algae, and just mud.
Basically, the owner of the property was not taking care of this place, and more importantly, didn't have safeguards in place to prevent an accident like this, right?
That's true. During the course of the case, it was a motions battle. We were fighting a really large law firm, which is a regional firm, with offices New Mexico, Montana, Wyoming, etc. There was a flurry of paper put to the court. One of the things to be determined was, does the information about a previous incident with the pond come in? Judge ruled with a typical 403 probative prejudicial analysis, no, it's not going to come in. A toddler had ended up in one of these ponds. Luckily, someone walking by pulled the toddler out, resuscitated the child. But that didn't come to the jury. In addition, after that, there were memos put out from management. Oh, be careful around these ponds. But they did no signage. They did no fences. They didn't do what they could have done to prevent Orion's death.
Right. And tell us some of the strategies, because you had these hurdles to get over. What are the strategies that you used to try to get the jury verdict that you did?
One of the things we wanted to do was, Colorado is set up like this. You can't ask for exemplary damages, and that's something that would go over our tort cap, because in Colorado, your child's life is worth, at that time, $436,000 in change.
And why is that?
Well, in Colorado, there was a lot of tort reform which benefited large industries. Of course, in Colorado, we have the ski industry. They didn't want to be hit with injury cases. It was really in the 70s that a lot of tort reform came in. With that, 60 days after you file a suit, you can ask for exemplary damages. Some people might say punitive damages. In this context, they're called exemplary. We argued to the court that because you had the previous incident with the child in the pond, because the management was clearly on notice that there were problems with that pond. They had evidenced that by the memos they put out. And in addition, one thing that was really very disturbing to me in the case, when Vennie, Orion's mother, walked around looking at the apartment complex, she said, "What's the story with the ponds? How deep are they?" "Oh, they're shallow." We even had a fight in the courtroom over what shallow meant. And I ended up arguing to the jury, shallow means the baby pool. Shallow means you walk out of it. This child could not walk out of it. One of the dramatic points of testimony during the case was the fireman who located Orion's body. First, he slipped in, didn't mean to. Even he slipped into the pond. When he felt something against his leg, he picked up the poor child, handed the child to two other firemen. It ended up 3 other firemen had to help him get out. He's a 6-footer. He couldn't have gotten out of that pond. Orion didn't have a chance here.
Ron, who were you fighting in this case, by the way?
Apartment management consultants. I dealt with their people basically who were out of California, big company, and of course the insurance company who was so interested in keeping their money in their pocket in this case was in Georgia. Of course, with the tort limits here, they got to save $3.5 million.
When you were picking a jury, were there any particular questions or issues that you brought up that were important to you to get the right jurors?
Steve, I'm a parent. I have had that incident, and more than once, where lightning has gone through my body, and I'm saying to myself, where's my daughter? I wanted to ask the jury about that because the question of the child being separated from the parent was central in this case. I didn't ask the jury, has that ever happened to you? Because I was satisfied that it has happened to everyone who is a parent. So what I asked the jury was this: raise your hand, and this was during voir dire, when you're talking to the jury, watching them, trying to select good jurors for your side of the case. And what I asked them was this: raise your hand, please, if this never happened to you, that your child was separated from you for seconds, minutes, you didn't know where your child was, you feel like you should know, and you feel that lightning go through your body, that I must find my child this moment. I didn't see one hand on the jury veneer, and to me that was allowing people on the jury veneer to understand this is common. It happens to all of us.
That was a very smart question. Glad you asked it.
Glad I did too. Glad I did too.
What was the end result? The jury, what did they come back with?
We asked the jury for $900,000 for each parent. The jury awarded $2 million to each parent. Now, the total award was reduced.
So the total was $4 million.
The total was $4 million in this case.
Question. I see this everywhere in the United States, where you have tort restrictions, caps. Sure. You say these tort laws went into effect back in the 70s. That's 30, 40 years ago.
I haven't done specific research, but generally that's when they came in Colorado.
It is amazing that jurors don't know these things. And that's why we do these shows, because if a tragedy like that happens to them, all of a sudden now they are under the gun with these restrictions, which are very unfair.
Here's the amazing thing. I've done a number of cases in Colorado where the tort limits apply to death. The judge will never tell the jury what the limit is. They go through the whole trial thinking, this jury thought, we're giving $2 million properly to Vennie. We're giving $2 million properly to Steve. And I think they're amazed when they find out the limits apply, and what they wanted for these plaintiffs didn't happen, never will happen in Colorado.
Well, congratulations on your verdict.
Well, thank you.
We have with us today your client, Vennie, and your wife, Bridgett, who are going to be coming on this show shortly here, because she works a lot with your firm in dealing with clients, right?
She does. Bridgett works not only in civil cases like this, but also criminal cases. And the reason she works with me is because I don't have time. During the trial, I don't even have time to talk to my client. I tell him to write something on a pad of paper. I have to hear every single word which is said in that courtroom. If I miss 5 or 10 words, it could make a huge difference in the appeals court. I have to hear everything. I can't sit and talk with anybody. Bridgett coordinates, and in this case, she coordinated with Vennie, with Steve, with their friends, and they were going through hell for this trial. They were going through hell. Bridgett brings a human aspect. She has very good people skills, and she helps them understand what's going on with the trial. If they have to get a question to me, she'll let me know what that is at a break, and we can deal with it then.
Good. Well, let's bring Bridgett and Vennie on right now. It is my great pleasure to introduce Bridgett and Vennie to the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Bridgett, you are invaluable at your husband's law firm. I understand that you work with all the clients because your husband is in court. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing, fighting the battles to win. In this particular case and with other clients, how do you work with the clients and how are you available? Because tragedies like this one right here, people are lost in the dark. What do you do? What's your special talent in this?
Well, you're right. On all the cases, I do work with the clients, but this particular case is different. Dealing with the plaintiffs here in this case, making sure that they have everything that they need, questions asked, comforting them, just being with them one-on-one is an important thing in any case, in this particular case also.
I would think that that when a person suffers the death of a loved one, there's probably times, because it keeps getting brought up, you're going to court, the other side is battling you and saying, no, it's not our fault, that you might get, disgusted with the whole process and maybe you just want to quit, right? Does that happen with clients sometimes? Where they express that, I don't know whether I can do this anymore? You know what?
In some cases they do, but that's why I step in and reassure them. When my husband cannot, when he's in court and have to pay attention to everything that's said in the courtroom, I feel it's my obligation as the wife and to make sure that everybody is comfortable and feeling good about it and not giving up.
And moving forward to get justice, right?
Yes.
Vennie.
Yes.
My condolences for the passing of your son. It's been a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Take us back to that day, if you will, when you first discovered what happened.
Seems like yesterday, but it seems like a million years ago at the same time. I was talking to his dad on the phone about scheduling and when the parents, the nights back and forth, and we were also just talking because we're best friends. And I let Orion go play on the stoop, the sidewalk. I had chalked out an Orion square that he was allowed to sit on. It was a really sunny day, and about every 5 minutes I went to go check on him, and I looked through the open door and he wasn't there. And so I ran outside and he still wasn't there. So I'm screaming on the phone with Steve that I gotta go, and just started knocking on every door and screaming that, maybe he went to somebody else's apartment, and then the neighbors started helping me look, and chaos. And then the police showed up, and then the fire department showed up, and that's when the fire department put me in my apartment, and when it let me see, even though I could see everything through the window, the really big sliding door. So I saw my son get dropped in the pond by the firemen. So even they couldn't save him.
Wow, what a terrible loss. What happened after? How did you end up with Ron's law firm?
Right after his death, everything is black. Yeah. It's like almost like a concussion. I don't really remember a lot for about 6 months. Then Vennie Colligan, Steve's dad, and Steve brought up the notion of doing this fight. And I wasn't sure if I could.
Yeah. How was it going through the trial? That must have been very painful, because you're seeing the other side, the lawyers that are representing the apartment complex and the companies saying, no, it's not our fault. And you must have been extremely angry about that, right?
There was a lot of their behavior that I was extremely angry about. They were excessively arrogant. It was hard because my mom was very ill at the same time. So trying to float the court case and me, that was difficult. But also being told I was a bad mom every day for months was excruciating, and getting torn apart on the stand.
They actually said that in court, that you were a bad mother, that you weren't watching your kid, it's your fault.
Absolutely.
Eventually, you and the father of Orion, ended up getting a $4 million verdict, $2 million apiece. That was kind of validation for the fact that the jury believed you guys and believed that the apartment complex was at fault, correct?
That's correct.
And it also vindicated the fact that you were not a bad mom, right?
To a stint. I will always, a mom has doubts every single day whether something happens to their child or not. But it was validation that I did everything that I could to prevent Orion's death, and somebody else lied.
Right. Although this was not able to be brought into the case in the courtroom, there was another person that fell in that same pond. It was a dangerous pond. They should have had it fenced off, whatever, so people wouldn't have that kind of danger. What is your opinion of the justice system now?
My opinion of the justice system is that if you have a rightful case, to keep fighting, and that even though this was a small firm, I remember the saying David versus Goliath, and that's really what it felt like. And that if you have a case, that it doesn't matter if there's 100 lawyers behind you. All you need is somebody to believe you. And they believed me, and supported Steve and I, and we went forward with it. So I absolutely believe in the justice system.
Yeah, you were very fortunate that you had Bridgett and Ron.
Yes.
That believed in you guys and took it to the final end.
Yes.
I want to thank you very much for being on the show, and I hope everything's better these days for you.
Thank you. It never goes away, but getting the word out about justice and making sure laws can be changed is vital for me. So just keep fighting.
I also understand you have Orion's father, Steve Colligan, here. So let's bring him on now, too. It is my great pleasure to introduce Steve Colligan to the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Steve, tell us about the day that you found out your son passed on.
I got a call telling me that he was missing and to head over. And I head over, and the apartment complex was gated, and started looking for him. Found out the gates were worthless. 3 of them were open, and running around the property on his name, asking everyone I ran into if they'd seen him, or last time I saw him, and maybe which way he went, and asked for help. Went to the local businesses outside the gates and asked for help, and came back. And at that point, the police had been called in. They called in the fire department, and they all started helping search. And some of the little kids made flyers for us and started handing them out to the people in the building, which was really sweet. And everyone started to look for a missing child, and the fire department started in the front pond and started going through it, and your heart sinks, and hours, eternity goes by, and one of the firefighters calls for help in the pond, and he's coming to the shore, and I can't see my son, but he's got something on his shoulder. And he gets to the shore, and he falls back in. He can't get out by himself. It takes 4 guys to pull him out of the pond. And he comes up with my son, and color's lost from his face already. And they start working on him. They get him in an ambulance, and they take him away. And we get held up there a little bit by the police, and then we finally get escorted over to the hospital to go see him.
How did you end up with Ron representing you and Vennie?
You want to point fault, and you want to find some reason for your loss and your heartache. And I remember specifically asking about the pond depth when I saw it the first time I visited. Oh, it's a shallow. Okay. Well, obviously it wasn't. And started calling around to trying to reach out through contacts and find a lawyer and and got referred over to Ron. You need a trial guy. You're going to need someone that knows his way around, and talk to this guy. And I remember going in and visiting him the first time, and him listening and caring about us. And I remember his voice being this deep, soothing voice, and I was like, okay, if I can listen to him, the jury can listen to him. And I knew he could show that he cared when he was representing us.
Ron, how long did the trial take, by the way?
It was a week.
A week. During the trial, Steve, you hear the other side saying it's your guy's fault, and it's Vennie's fault. I mean, this must have been disgusting, right? What did you think about all that?
I know they have a job to do, but there should be a limit, and there obviously wasn't that week.
Yeah. When the jury came back with a $4 million award for you and Vennie, you felt vindicated, correct?
Yeah. Yes. Someone else was saying that we weren't wrong, we weren't at fault, and they could have done much better.
What did you think about the news of the judge reducing the award? What did you think about that?
Ron told us ahead of schedule that there was a cap, and that there was no better that we could do.
Yeah.
And so we were expecting that regardless what number they came back with, whether it was 2 million or 4 million or 10 million, it didn't make a difference.
It wasn't about the money. It was about proving that other people were responsible, correct? And holding them responsible.
Yeah, and hoping that they would adjust their business so that this didn't happen to any other parent ever.
Steve, if I can interject, in Colorado we have a concept called comparative negligence. And sometimes in wrongful death cases, I had one where they said, well, this liquor store was 70% at fault, but the plaintiff was 30% at fault. That changes the style of the award, obviously. In this case, apartment management consultants were found 100% at fault. Magnus, Colligan, 0.
Well, you did a fantastic job. What do you think about the job that his firm did? And he did.
Outstanding.
You were right in the beginning to say this guy cares about us and he's going to nail them, right? Well, that's good. That's why we're doing this show. And I want to thank you very much for being on the show. Thank you. Tell our audience a little bit about what victims of wrongful deaths and define that are up against in the state of Colorado if they want to sue somebody who killed somebody.
Well, you've got a burden as a plaintiff's attorney to show that the death was in fact wrongful. Somebody didn't just die. It was because of the negligence of the responsible party. And where exemplary damages come in, you have to argue that it was willful and wanton. That's a higher bar. That's a bar that the judge would not allow us to go over in this case, much to my regret, because it would have allowed us to get more money for the plaintiffs.
Excuse me, you had mentioned exemplary damages. What would they have been?
It would have been up to the jury.
Okay, but they could be over and above the cap.
Over and above the cap, by definition, yes. But the judge said, well, after his analysis, I just don't think you qualify for exemplary damages, you're not getting them. That was a big disappointment in this case.
How do caps, the maximum you can get in the state of Colorado is $436,000?
At that time, it was $436,000 and change for your child's life.
What is it now?
I just took a peek at that statute. It's up, but it is still severely limited.
So let's talk about, Orion died on somebody else's premises. There are cases of premises liability. How did that figure in here?
Well, here, Orion and his mother were invitees. Under the law, that sets up a special duty to the lessor. So we sued under that special duty.
Okay. You have a lot of people contact you regarding a whole array of cases, criminal as well as civil. How do you end up selecting the clients you want to represent?
There's some lawyers who won't do some cases. I had a partner in law school who ended up being a great criminal defense attorney in New Mexico. His sister was raped. He wouldn't do a rape case. So every attorney has their own criteria for who they'll represent. The way I look at it, everybody needs a defense. In the criminal arena, everybody needs a defense, even if it's a heinous crime, even if the proof appears just to be overwhelming. You always have to balance for the court, for a jury if you go to trial, what all the equities in the case are. I think everybody needs a defense. I'll go and defend just about any criminally charged person who needs that defense.
I want to thank you very much for being on the show, and congratulations on that verdict.
Well, thank you. It was hard fought, and we were glad to get what we did get.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.